Good morning, folks. Fusion 360 manufacturing models. So I actually didn't know what this was. I came across it recently and it kind of blew me away because in Fusion we have CAD and then we go from CAD into CAM, but it ends up that within CAM, there's, I wouldn't call it hidden, but it's a relatively new feature set within CAM that is its own form of CAD, which has some really cool capabilities to modify our parts to make it more appropriate or better for a lot of our CAM machining. And I asked Devon if he would hop onto a call to walk me through, really from an expert's point of view, what are manufacturing models, what are they good for, and maybe even times not to use them. So Devon, will you give us the expert's walkthrough of manufacturing models?
Yeah, absolutely. Hopping into Fusion here, if we go to the manufacturing workspace, just a basic kind of version of this. If we go to setup and go to create manufacturing model, some people may have seen this. When you do this, it just makes this manufacturing model and people might be like, oh, I don't know what that does. If you right click on it though, and you go to edit manufacturing model, what you'll see happens is it's going to bring in this like modeling environment here, but it says manufacture. So in here, there's a ton of things we can do. Like if we wanted to make some soft jaws or even draw a sketch for a toolpath. I mean, is that something you do all the time?
Yeah, the demo that I saw that really caught my eye were two things. One, I think what you just sort of said, which is, look, I want to build sketch and CAD stuff for my machining workflow, but I don't necessarily want the CAD side of the world or engineers or other folks to even know it exists. The other thing which kind of blew me away was the ability to automatically defeature a part. So those are the two things I know, which I'd love for you to show, but take us away in terms of where would you use this?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you might rough this out with like a small tool. Now, one of the things to, I guess, just think about here is I would probably want to have the original model, right? The original source. So if I was going to modify this, one of the limitations of the manufacturing model is that it only allows us to select one group or one kind of image of what we have here in the modeling environment. So if I was to go in here, and I'll just show you an example of why you would do it the way I would normally show you. If we go in here and go to simplify and go to remove features, and I'm just going to uncheck these, we'll click on the model, and then I just want to get rid of like some of the holes. So we see it identified some of the holes there. We can change this feature slider, maybe those bigger holes I don't want to get rid of. And then we can just hit delete and it'll get rid of them. Now we can hit close and we can hit finish edit. Now you're probably asking like, well, why wouldn't you just do that in the design? And like you said, if there's other engineers and things, people that are using this and they don't want you to mess up that data, we would have messed that up if we went into design. But now if we go into design, you see that none of those changes affected the part here. It was just for manufacturing. Now, the only caveat to this, what I just did, if I go to machine this and I eventually have to machine those holes, when I create a setup, I choose what the manufacturing model is, either the manufacturing model or the default. Now, because the default does not, or the manufacturing model here does not have those holes in it, I wouldn't be able to machine them.
That's actually a great point because it's one of the things that we see in our training classes or when folks email us because they're stumped is they don't realize that they've selected, like sometimes I'll select two bodies and the second body has features that fill in those holes. And so some of the 3D or model aware toolpaths won't go in there because Fusion thinks that that's filled with material. And so it's not able to machine it away.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we just go through that workflow again and go into manufacture and go to create manufacturing model, what I would probably do is edit the manufacturing model. I would take this, and this is a pretty important step too. I would say copy, and then I would go to my top level and I would say paste new, because I do want to modify one. I don't want to modify both. One of the things I do in my workflow, John, I don't know how beneficial you think this might be, but I make a lot of manufacturing models, whether they be in the design workspace or not. I like to keep the customer's model, whatever color it was sent to me at. But for me, for reference, what I do is I usually go to appearance and I make this like I just drag a color on it. And then I usually make this a green, just so I know, hey, this is a manufacturing model, and I turn the reflections down. So I can modify this one, and then I can clearly distinguish between these two, one being the master, the customer's model, the other one being the one that I'm going to use to modify.
I like that, but now I have a question, which is, why does your Fusion look different than mine?
That is because there is a new environment here. We go down to display settings and go to environment. There's this river Rubicon. It's pretty easy on the eyes. I've never really, I don't know if you, I like a darker environment, but I was never really a fan of this gray room. It kind of just looks weird. And some of the stuff with sketches are like really light. This does do something kind of weird. The river Rubicon does something weird with the sketches if we change it back. If we make a new sketch here, one of the things I noticed is if I make a closed profile and I go to select that profile, it turns it white, which is kind of weird.
You don't like that?
I mean, if I had stuff in there, like a construction line, and I put it like that and I hit X, when I hover over this, I can't see any of that stuff.
Huh. I guess I never thought about that. In the other environments, you do see through the color to see background geometry or construction?
I mean, we can test it right now. I guess I don't know the answer for all of those. I usually use Infinity Pool, and in this case, we would see everything. So it really just depends on how it's highlighted. But I am liking it. It's kind of easy on the eyes, right? Especially if you're staring at Fusion all day.
I love the green visual tip. That's a really good idea for knowing you don't get confused about which model you're in.
Yeah, it's just something I always did because, you'll have like staged models or like process models that you'll do sometimes for like a casting or something like that, or maybe something has to get roughed out and sent out and come back. I usually just save that model as a different color. But if we go into Simplify in here and remove features, it asks you to select the body, and then you can pick everything that it sees. So it sees some other stuff on here. Generally, this is all selected. So usually what I'll do is I'll just hit deselect all, and usually I'm trying to get rid of like fillets or some of the holes, and then sometimes like even these little chamfers can sometimes be a pain, so you can turn on chamfer. You might want to do these in different sections though. I think it's identifying it as a whole.
The remove features feature, which I guess is available in the regular CAD workspace as well, but man, that's incredible, because like I've had issues where I'm trying to create a containment zone and the chamfer adjusts it incorrectly, or trying to trace the outside of a part for a finished pass, and you don't want to have the risk of picking a 5 thou chamfer and it ends up, that seems like a great feature.
The other thing, if you wanted to use these inside of the modeling environment, there's a couple caveats. So if I close this out, because we probably won't talk too much about that file anymore. If we reopen this though, and we look for the Simplify and Arrange tools, you'll see that Arrange is here, but Simplify is not. So two things have to happen to get that to work for everybody. You'd have to go to Preferences, and then go to Design, and then it's this bottom checkbox here, Enable Arrange and Simplify tools. I'm pretty sure this is off by default. I'm not sure if that's been changed or not, but you would have to turn this on. And then you can see for me it's on, but I don't see the Simplify tool here. So we do have to turn on the timeline.
Oh, the capture design history. Got it.
To see the Simplify tools here. So now we have those, replace with primitives, remove faces, remove features. I think, for manufacturing is probably the most beneficial here. But this was for a long time only available in the simulation mode for simplifying a model that you were going to simulate against, right? Because you don't want to have all those fillets and all those extra bodies be tessellated or whatever while they're doing the simulation. So this was a tool used for that. You're
talking about like FEA simulation, not CAM toolpath. Yeah, got it.
Yes.
How would you use manufacturing models for fixturing?
One of the things, and I think this is one of the reasons why, this would be very valuable. If John and myself worked at a company and we were making these components and John was the engineer and I was the machinist, I would be upset if John, put his vices and everything in this file and kind of dirtied it up for me, especially if I had reference geometry and the jigs for the frame and everything in here. It wouldn't be, it wouldn't be good, right? It would make the files really messy, or there'd be a lot of like linked files and different versions and a lot of things to update. So if we wanted to keep it clean, what we could do here is just go to the manufacturer and say we want to create a manufacturing model. And you've used Derive before, right? To kind of steal a part out.
That's what I was just going to ask you. I'm not perfect when it comes to Fusion manufacturing workflows, really, but we do try to now, like with the Saunders machine work stuff, we'll try to create a CAD model and keep it its own file, and then we'll drive it into a new CAM file. but we don't do that all the time. And frankly, sometimes I hop into the CAM file and I see that it's out of date to the CAD, and I don't always want to click get latest.
Yeah, I like that workflow, especially for the environment that I came from, where we were doing a lot of parts that are controlled, and we really don't have the ability to change the part. I do want to keep that customer's part as kind of a reference, and just being able to be in the design workspace and willy-nilly click on like a surface and delete it, right, is bad. I would never want one of my machinists to do that. So to have the file linked, you can still hit edit in place, but it's a little bit more intentional of going, hey, I do actually want to, edit this file. So there's kind of an extra step there. But yeah, if we wanted to, pull this out into a different file, that might be something I also did. We could go into create and just say create Derive, and then, save this file real quick, and then choose just the, the one component or the body that I want out of here. Because honestly, on the assembly here, I don't even need the bolts. I just need this body, hit OK. And
can I stop you though?
Yeah.
This workflow you're talking about is the sort of Derive into a new file workflow, which is a different choice than using a manufacturing model, or you're still going to do this with a manufacturing model for this part?
This would be if I wanted to create a separate file away from the fork assembly itself. One of the things you'll see us do, we are going to use Derive, so this will kind of be maybe a little confusing because it'll be like Inception. Wait, he took a Derive and he brought the file out, but then he's going to go into manufacturing and use Derive to bring a file in. If we wanted to insert some workholding. So the one thing Derive does is it makes like an associative child. I don't think that's the proper term for it, but it makes a copy of that model that does inherent changes from the parent. So if we're machining this and I make a one-off version where I engrave Saunders Machine Works on here, perfect example, but that's not going to be the standard one for everybody. That file will be here modified. And then if in the future we change this and you happen to order the next version or whatever, I will already have your modified version of it. When I change the parent, the child will also update. So your version really cool. Here.
So you could update a bore size on the parent, and the child would inherit the updated bore size, but the child would also still continue to be uniquely engraved Saunders Machine Works?
Yes. So I could put a little fillet on here, like 0.03, right? And if we go back to the fork and we... I'm just going to click on this part and hit V for visibility. I'm just going to move just this top. So I'm going to control select these. We'll hit move copy. I should be able to move this, hopefully. Yep, a little bit. And then I'm going to save this. So we see there's nothing here in the original file telling me that something's been changed, right? Because technically nothing has. But I did just update the original file here. Now in my Derive, we can see that it is now out of date. And when I click on this, pay attention to what happens in my fillet. My hole is going to move, but my fillet or my modification will stay there once it updates. And now you can see it moved. So that would be one of the things I would use this for, is if we wanted to make kind of a one-off of something. I think about like motorcycles or whatever, where we want to have dress-up hardware. We might have a library of a bunch of standard hardware, but maybe I want to make one-off piece where I make super light hardware. I might want to still have that hardware linked to the original, but make some modifications to it. That's what I would use Derive for. In this file here, we could go to manufacture. And once we're in manufacture, we can edit this manufacturing model. And again, we have this whole assembly here. I'm just going to look for the piece that I want. I think it's this. I'm going to right click on here and just say isolate. And then remember, I want to have a copy of this if I'm going to modify it. So I'm going to click on it and I'm going to say copy. And then I'm going to go to the top here and I'm going to paste a new. If I paste the same one and I modify it, both of them are going to change. If we copy this and paste it in here, we'll get a body, and then we'll have both of them. So I'm going to just turn that one off real quick. I'm going to hit A for appearance, and then I'll just grab my favorite little aluminum color here and adjust.
I never realized you could right click to change the aluminum, the color like that. That's great.
Yeah, whenever you're making something like that, I just kind of fire them on there, and then you can adjust kind of what they look like. And then on here, if we wanted to, modify this, we can go to simplify, remove features. Like these holes, you ever got a model like this, John, where you had to machine it and it's like, there's nothing I can do with that. I got to basically blow this out and redraw it. We can just grab these holes on the part. Let's say just get rid of the holes, maybe not all of them. Hit delete. And there we go. And then so like for fixturing and work holding, we could bring in a vise. So if we go to insert here, insert derive, we can go to work holding. And then hit select. What this will do, it's kind of confusing because it opens up that part again. And then this is an assembly I have for like a UMC 500. We can just change what parts are in here or what I want to bring into the mix here. Maybe I want to use this bigger vise. We're going to use the smaller vise and this adapter. So we could just pick these, or we could just honestly bring in the whole thing. It's totally up to you. Hit OK. It's going to bring those into this file here. And then we can move everything around and adjust, you know, the jaws and everything and start to build this for our fixture assembly and then put this also on the machine.
Got it. So that point there, I guess, is manufacturing model isn't really using the CAD workspace to create sketches or extrusions, but rather you're using the manufacturing model workspace to add work holding bodies or components that the folks that are in the CAD workspace don't have a clue are in the file, which is great.
Yeah, because you can see here, none of that stuff exists.
That's awesome. And that's interesting. With Derive, does it keep the file relatively lightweight in terms of Fusion performance because it's not copying the whole thing in, or can it get kind of bogged down if you do a bunch of this?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't ran into too many limitations, but normally when I'm doing one file, I do notice the performance is a little bit better.
Okay, got it. Anything else we should know, or any reasons not to use manufacturing model?
Yeah, I mean, the only reason not to use it, you know, it's really meant for nesting, right? When we go in here and we make a nest, let me find a part. Oh, even this part. If we wanted to nest like 100 of these parts, we could go from design to manufacture here, go to fabrication, click nest. Oh, let me just double check the process material library. Yeah, we want this to be bigger sheets. 48 by 96. And then we'll say nest, create nest study. Put here, it says create manufacturing model, which is optional.
Okay.
Show part outlines, which will make sketches of the part. And then include stock. I like it to include stock because it makes it in the manufacturing model. And then based on how many we told it to make, we hit OK. This might take a second, but it is going to group up that many of them and show you the remnant. So this is why it exists, because, you know, you might think, hey, we could do this with a range or whatever. Well, when you're doing that, you're making additional bodies. You know, here in the design workspace, we just only have this one part because the designer doesn't need to know the sheet layout or how you're going to manufacture this. They just care about the one component. And especially if you have other reference stuff in here, it's important to kind of keep those separate.
Would that work? And I don't mean to put you on the spot here, especially if you don't have a file ready, but the classic example of like a wood-routed Adirondacks type chair where you've got all these different CAD files that are modeled in place, but you want to kind of flat pack it. It's not sheet metal where you're bending it, but would manufacturing models or nests let you take that built furniture assembly and lay it out nested to, say, put it on a router or water jet or
snowplow example here, and it kind of does that. So it also includes like some of the bent materials. So as long as you have flat patterns made for your sheet metal, they should flatten out in here. And I won't spend the time changing anything. Looks like we're all good. We'll hit create nest study, and we'll tell it we just want to make one of these. And what it'll do is it'll go through and unpack all that stuff, group similar things together. We'll say we just want one, and hit OK. And then we'll let that generate. Happens pretty quick. And then we can see like I didn't take the hardware out, so it nested all this stuff together. It thinks it's the same thickness. And if we get down here to like a sheet, we can activate that, activate this, and you see it. It'll nest these together. Let's find another one like this one. Put everything together automatically.
You pulled up a UMC earlier. Can I ask you, can we do another one of these where is we have a UMC 500 coming. We used to have a UMC 750, but frankly, some stuff has gotten added to Fusion that wasn't around when we had the 750, like machine simulation and machine config stuff. Can we do one where you walk through kind of a, hey, here's how I would set up a brand new 5-axis in terms of the CAD
absolutely.
CAM workflow templates? I asked Devon to do this partly because Devon now works for DSI, which is perfect because we do hands-on training here at Saunders. They do remote, well, actually you can tell them who DSI is and what you guys do.
Yeah, so DSI is a value-added reseller, right? A lot of people, buy their software from Autodesk just online through the e-store. One of the things that might happen though is, you might have questions or, hey, my Fusion doesn't work today, or, I'm having a problem logging into my account. Autodesk does help people with that. I'm not saying they don't, but if you want to call somebody and get direct, support, we essentially work for you when you buy our licenses, your licenses through us. So we can handle all of that stuff for you. And then one of the other things, Autodesk is kind of like Snap-on tools, right? They make tools, but they don't fix cars. So they can help you with the software if the software doesn't work. But if, John, you're working on a part and you're like, hey, I can't get this tool path to work or whatever, Autodesk doesn't program parts. We can help you with programming and application and things like that. So imagine it's like having a couple other machinists that can help your machinists, get from start to finish with what they need to do, whether they're running into trouble or not. One of the other things that I think is pretty common for all of us, you probably run into a problem in Fusion. You're like, hey, I want to, research this thing, whatever it is, nesting, right? I wouldn't want you to go watch 3 hours of, nesting videos or whatever to learn the 10 or 15 seconds you needed to check this box to get it to do what you had to do there. So yeah, we do training, post processors, we do support for Fusion. We sell all of that stuff also. And then we don't just specialize in Fusion. We certainly love Fusion and that application, but we do Power Mill and Feature Cam and Power Shape and Power Inspect also.
I just love that because when I'm stuck trying to do a pencil toolpath, usually 45 seconds with somebody who actually knows what they're doing gets me through my problem, which, I love YouTube too. It's been great, but sometimes you actually just want to have, click a button or make a phone call and get in touch with somebody who can actually give you some expert help. Thank you for helping today on Manufacturing Model. As always, folks, hope you enjoyed. Take care. See you soon.